please join me in welcoming to the stage, first of all, Jessica Chastain, Michael Caine, Anne Hathaway, Christopher Nolan, Matthew McConaughey, Mackenzie Foy, and Emma Thomas.
Oh yeah, you've got to put it down.
Yeah.
Christopher, it's an amazing film. It's a kind of combination of the epic and the intimate, of space and love. It sort of bestrides galaxies and time, but at the core of it, it's a kind of father and daughter story. So what were the reasons for making it? Why did you want to kind of jump onto this project? Because I think Spielberg had it initially. Your brother written it for him.
Yeah, I mean, my interest in it was really a couple of key things. The first was the relationship between the father and his children. I'm a father myself. I sort of related to it quite a lot, found it very powerful. And I like the idea of combining that with this story that speculates about a potential moment in human evolution where mankind would have to reckon with its place in the wider universe. I grew up in an era that was really a golden age of blockbusters, films by people like Steven Spielberg. If you look at Close Encounters and the way that addressed that idea of this sort of inevitable moment where humans would meet aliens and addressed it from a family perspective and a very relatable human perspective. I really like the idea of trying to give today's audiences some sense of that form of storytelling.
Okay. Emma, just a question to you. You and Chris have done big and epic and grand for quite a while now. Were there any sort of particular challenges to this one? I mean, you had to build 500 acres of corn, and I think in Iceland you had to build a road. Mm-hmm. So what made this one different to what you'd done before, or more challenging?
I would say probably, I think you've hit on it really. It was sort of, I think the thing I love about this film is that it's sort of many things rolled into one. And so whilst we were doing a lot of the sort of more intimate character stuff, we also had these massive, disparate locations to shoot in. And Iceland is an amazing place, but it's, a lot of the places that we were in were incredibly remote and incredibly challenging places to be, just because of the conditions there. And so really it was sort of, I think the biggest challenge was getting spaceships there and crew to the locations, and it was very, very challenging, but I think it really paid off, and it's a lot more fun to watch it than it was to be there in some cases.
Cool. Okay, let's get some mics. I think yes, first mic there.
To Anne Hathaway, I read in Empire magazine, if I would ever make a trip like this, I couldn't have better company than Matthew McConaughey. If you explain that. And to Mr. McConaughey, after being a Dallas cowboy, what was the challenge to be now a space cowboy? And did you have good catering for that movie?
Did he have good catering? Did I hear that?
I think it's a weight loss joke.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because it was sin in that movie.
So, is that to you?
The first one I think was to Anne.
The first one was, why is Matthew McConaughey a great person to travel through space with? Well, it's a real pleasure to work with someone who knows how to take their job seriously, but also has a real light touch. And Matthew never lost focus. He never lost his connection to why we were there. But that didn't mean we didn't laugh. He's full of amazing stories. He's someone who has really lived a wonderful and very varied life, and so I loved hearing kind of tales from how he got to be where he is now. And he's a kind person, and on a set that could have felt tense, I found he was wonderful at putting me at ease. So fantastic actor, fantastic man. What more could you want? It's a shame he's so unattractive, though.
Thanks, Anne. What was your? I was a Dallas. What was your question to me? Dallas cowboy to what?
What was the challenge after a Dallas cowboy to be a space cowboy?
What was the challenge?
The catering was very good.
The catering was much, yes. It was excellent. There was only one way to go, and that was up into space and with the weight. It's a challenge, difference. Well, one, the Dallas Buyers Club was a very small independent film that we shot very quickly, and it was very earthbound. This was a much larger picture. I will say this, and it's a compliment to the process, even though this went on for 5 months, and there's a much larger scope and scale and set pieces and such. When you're acting in a Chris Nolan film, it felt just as intimate and just as raw and natural as most independents like Dallas Buyers Club are forced to feel, because you don't have the time. You don't have the money. Well, we had the time and we had the money on Interstellar, but when you're actually shooting, it's very intimate and it's very raw and natural, as I said. So I never felt, and I don't think any of the actors ever felt, overwhelmed by the scope or the set pieces or such. And I've talked to actors who have been on big action films or films that have large sets, or you go to these locations and you've got helicopters are flying around and everything's built for you on the set. I've talked to actors that felt like they got lost in the experiences they had. I didn't, and I don't believe anyone felt like they were overwhelmed by the massive scale. But that also is because this man was never overwhelmed by it either. He was always on top of it. And so, each day felt like very intimate, even though we were in the midst of some really huge stuff.
Just before we come to the next question, can I just ask the other actors about working with Chris and that kind of intimate sort of feeling you have on set? Because you've said it was like an independent movie as well. And
Yeah, I don't normally do big movies. I'm kind of new to this world, and I'd always been afraid that jumping on a big budget film, you would lose the relationships in favor of special effects. But the great thing about working with Chris is it's all practical sets, so you actually have things to react to as an actor, which is awesome. Like, there's no green screen. They were chucking dust in my face every day, and there was real corn that they grew. And even like what Matthew said, it moves so quick. I would do 3 or 4 takes, and it was so incredible because he just kind of let me get it out of my system, try what I wanted to without trying to impose on me something that wasn't natural. And then with a very delicate hand, he would come over and just say one sentence. Like towards the end, he said to me, "This is her zen." And with that little tiny, exquisite note would open my performance in a way that I had never imagined. So as incredible as the technical and visual aspects of the sets are, you never lose the emotional component.
okay. Mackenzie, this was your first time working with Chris, and Michael, this is your 6th time.
Yes.
So if you could just give a little comment about working with Chris and how you found the experience, and then we'll come back to it.
Mr. Christopher Nolan is awesome. He is amazing, and I want to be a director when I get older, and just being able to watch him make words come to life was just amazing, and I learned a lot from him.
Okay. Michael, is he awesome?
I'll say. You spend your life as an actor sort of making a picture, say, is it going to be a hit, is it going to be a miss, and sometimes a hit, and sometimes... I've had 6 pictures from Christopher, and everyone's was a hit. So whenever he says, "You want to do a movie?" I say, "Yes." He says, "You want to read the script?" I say, "No." No, it's quite extraordinary working with him, because he also writes it, and nothing is what it seems. I remember the first time he came to me with the script. He came to my house in the country, and he said, "I've got a movie." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "Batman." And I thought to myself, well, I'm too old to play Batman. What's he want me to play? And he said, I want you to play the butler. And I thought, well, what sort of dialogue I have? I said, what do I say? Dinner is served. Would you like a beverage with that? And things. He said, "No, Michael, read the script." And of course, I read the script, and it wasn't the butler. It was the foster father of Batman. Nothing is what it seems with Chris.
The boy there, please.
This is to everyone. If you're asked to go on a top secret save the world mission in real life, would you go on it?
No.
Jessica?
I wouldn't, because I wouldn't be any good on a secret. I'm only good at pretending I can save the world, but not actually doing it.
Under the highly unlikely set of circumstances that would make me the best person to save the world, I would go on it, but I really don't expect to be asked.
Chris?
With all the best intentions, I think if the world is looking to filmmakers to save the world, it's in terrible trouble.
Matthew?
I don't know, but I played one on TV.
Yeah.
Somebody said, I guess somebody, Anne, you're the only one up there right now, right?
Yeah.
Everyone
Oh,
else
and
is around
we're
you?
in really bad
Mackenzie, you going to
shape.
go?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
Mackenzie's
Mackenzie-
going.
Mackenzie
Emma, are you
go.
going?
I
Okay,
think
so
that
it's
Mackenzie is the right person.
I think that's a no from
Yeah, I'll
those
go.
people.
I'll fly.
But thank you. Gentleman there.
This is a question for you. Maybe Christopher can answer properly. My question is, after Gravity and also if this film does well in the business, if we can expect green light from the majors in Hollywood, sci-fi films for grown-ups.
Well, obviously, the success of Alfonso's movie is very encouraging from the point of view of working in science fiction. We'll see how we do. I mean, the thing you hope for doing an original project that isn't a sequel, isn't a franchise, that kind of thing isn't based on something from another medium. The hope is if it succeeds, that it encourages that type of filmmaking within the studio system. It's what we try to do with Inception. It'd be nice for it to work with this as well. But we'll wait and see.
Thank you.
For Mr. Nolan, one question, since I'm from Sweden, how is it working with Hoyte van Hoytema, your terrific DP who is half Swedish? And secondly, since a lot of major people in the US that are going into television, what would it take for you to sort of direct for HBO or Netflix, etc.?
Well, Hoyte's Dutch, man. You can't claim him. He lives in Sweden. He lives in
He's
Sweden.
half Swedish now. We always try to claim him.
Well, you're right to try and claim him. And he lives in Sweden and has a lovely Swedish family. And he's really extraordinary. One of the things he was able to do for me that I absolutely loved is achieve a degree of spontaneity and simplicity in the way he shot the film that you rarely see on such a huge film, particularly in this genre. I mean, for somebody to be sort of, grubbing around in a spaceship, grabbing things documentary style and whatever, it was really, really phenomenal. And his command of the IMAX medium, which is extremely challenging technically, was extraordinary. I mean, there are handheld, intimate scenes shot with these enormous cameras. I don't know how he did it. He just put handles on the thing and picked it up. I think these Dutch guys are pretty strong at times. Working with him was a joy. So as I say, you're right to claim him.
And the second thing was about working in TV.
I don't know. I like movies. I think movies are great.
There's a gentleman here with a microphone. Yes, thank you.
It's a question for Mr. Nolan. You've mentioned IMAX just now. Do you feel kind of compelled to make films now on this scale in IMAX? In the sense that Hollywood is kind of under threat from other mediums. There's a lot of success in television. There's the video game industry. Do you feel that your career is pushed that way, irrespective of what stories you might like to tell, or how do you respond?
No, I mean, for me, the great thing about movies has always been the large screen, large audience experience. That's what you always hope for. One of my earliest movie-going memories was going to Leicester Square to see 2001 when I was 7 years old, and I've never forgotten the scale of that experience. I saw my first IMAX film when I was 15 and immediately wanted to make features that way at that point. So really for me, working on this scale and that medium, it's just a long-held dream of mine.
Okay, person there and then one behind there. Thank you. And then you.
Does it work? Okay.
Yes, it works.
This is also a question for all of you or whoever wants to answer it. Looking into the future, are you more positive or negative?
About what?
Yeah, about Earth, how it goes on, the environment.
I'm positive.
I'm 81, so I'm positive.
And Mackenzie, you're 14. How about you?
Well, like I know like eventually the Earth's gonna die, but I think I'll probably be dead by that time, so I think I'm good.
Thank you. There's a gentleman at the back there, and then.
Question from Hungarian Jessica and then Matthew. Your characters are role models, almost heroes. On a personal level, is there anything that you could really envy or maybe admire them for?
Yeah. You know, Cooper and the film as a whole, the dare of courage and discovery, you know, explores, having the instincts, having the knowledge that then lend to the instincts to override a computer, which I think we're always going to need. It's a few of the things. I mean, one of the things I really take away from this film is that it's got such it challenges mankind, but it's incredibly faithful in mankind and in our capacities.
What I take from my character, what I loved so much about her is I admired the scientific discovery, of course, that she makes, but more so I admire a person who's able to overcome their own ideas or anger and to become a more open and loving person. So that's what I admire most about her.
And Anne, what about yours? Do you admire your character? Anne?
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. When I first read the screenplay, I didn't totally understand my character, and I didn't for quite some time. Without revealing anything, something happens to her in the movie that I was just thinking about, and I thought, wow, that's one of those things that changes you. And then all of a sudden, she made sense to me as someone who goes through a journey, and I believe the journey she goes from is arrogance and fear to humility and openness. And just like Jessica said, which is a beautiful answer, I think anybody who has the courage to go on that journey is somebody very deserving of respect.
Great. There's a gentleman at the back, and then here, and then there, please.
Hi, yeah, question from New Scientist, Michael Kane. First line of your memoir, you say the shortest distance between 2 points is not necessarily a straight line. So have you always been interested in wormholes?
I'm a very good amateur gardener, and I see quite a lot of wormholes. And that's what I thought it meant. But I didn't understand it until this movie, and then I met Kip Thorne, who was, I think, did he discover the wormholes or did he figure it out or anything? But that's who I was playing in the movie. So I know a lot about wormholes now, and I've seen the movie, and we've been through a wormhole, so we know what's on the other side. Special effects. and for me, it was. I thought I knew what to do because I grew a beard just like Kip Thorne, and then I asked him lots of questions about anything that was puzzling me. Then I went into my office set, which he had designed, and there was an algebraic problem which was about 50 feet long and 4 feet high. And I thought I might have come up against something here that I wasn't going to be good at, you know? So I said, how many problems is that? He said, it's one. I said, do you know what it means? He said, I wrote it. I said, do you know the answer? He said, yes. He said, but it's too difficult to tell you. So that's where I stopped trying to be clever. And I became a dumb actor again.
Christopher Nolan. A lot of the issues you explore in your movies are underpinned by have a strong grounding in science. Can you say something about how science informs your storytelling?
Well, I mean, in the case of Interstellar, it's most obviously that way because of Kip's involvement, as Michael was pointing out. Kip's long-held dream for the movie was always to do a science fiction film that was based on the possibilities offered by real science. I enjoyed working that way because it wasn't a set of rules imposed upon the storytelling. It was really about a set of possibilities. It was really about sitting with Kip and saying, what can real-world science offer us as narrative directions? And the things that he was able to open up for me were far more exotic and surprising than anything I could have come up with just, as a screenwriter.
Thank you. Gentleman there, and then we'll come to you next. Yes.
Question for Mr. Nolan. Can you tell us a little bit about your collaboration with Mr. Zimmer and how you achieved that amazing score?
Yeah, I mean, the way I approached this score, I've done several films with Hans, and really enjoyed that process. And we try and, change the collaboration, change the way we work every time. And in the case of this, what we did is I called him up and I said, I'd like you to give me a day of your time. And this is before I'd started writing on the script. He had no idea what the genre was going to be of the film. He had no idea anything about it, except I gave him a letter with one page, and it described the sort of fable at the heart of the film. It had a little bit of the dialogue. It was really about the relationship between a father and his child. And I said, okay, work on that for a day, and then at the end of the day, you've got to play me what you've done, and that will be the score of the film. And that's what he did. And then we took the tune he wrote at the end of the day, which I thought perfectly captured the feelings at the heart of the film. And then over the next 2 years, we built that out into what the final score is. But I'm very pleased with his work, and I think working in that way, we were able to achieve a very close relationship between music and image.
Okay, thank you. There's a gentleman, yes, you with the glasses. And sorry, you'll be second after this.
Question for Chris. The film has this extraordinary visual style. I mean, this is absolutely remarkable. One thinks of Gravity, one thinks of 2001, and I wondered which films had been the most influential or had given you the most inspiration. And I cannot resist asking everybody which your favorite character in a science fiction movie is.
I mean, there are so many influences on the film. I mean, you point to one of them in particular, 2001, was an obvious influence on the film, but a huge inspiration for the film. There are quite a few others. I mean, the key one in a technical sense, I think, and in terms of the spirit of it, is Philip Kaufman's The Right Stuff, which I think is an extraordinary film. We screened a print of it to the crew before we started the film, as we were discussing our methodology and how we did certain things. And then actually Hoyte, my DP, introduced me to Tarkovsky's Mirror, which I think had a big influence on the sort of elemental things in the story to do with wind and dust and water and so forth. So there are a lot of different things sort of rattling around in there. And as for my favorite character in a science fiction film, I mean, it's got to be Darth Vader, isn't it? It's like,
let's do that very quickly. Emma, let's start with you. Favorite character, and then we can come back and go to the next question.
I would have to say Sigourney Weaver's character in Alien, because she's a tough woman.
Yeah. Mackenzie?
Either Darth Vader or Spock.
Cool. Matthew?
Thank you. Chewbacca and Murph.
In that order.
Very similar.
Anne?
R2-D2 and Ripley.
Okay. Michael?
Sandy Bullock in Gravity.
Mine would be Princess Leia and Hal.
Cool. There's a gentleman with a white T-shirt. You've been patient.
Manuel Halpern from Portugal. I'd like to know, I believe the film has a very strong ecological message, and it's a very serious problem, so we really have to save the world. And what I would like to know is, you in your real life, what do you do about it? What is your ecological footprint? What do you do to be heroes, just as we all have to do, so we don't have to live any other place?
Your ecological footprint. So do you recycle, I suppose, and drive a Prius?
How many times do you wear your jeans before you wash them?
I could answer that. I'm vegan, and I don't think everyone should be vegan. But I do believe in something like meatless Mondays, and if everyone in the world gave up meat for one day, it would make a huge difference in terms of the carbon footprint. So that's something I speak for.
Cool.
Me, I was so poor for so long that I didn't use anything. I didn't do cars. I didn't eat very much, and so I figured the world owed me a debt, so I've been eating very well and had a big car for a long time, but I still haven't caught up with my youth.
Chris, do you want to answer? Because
you're skipping out.
Oh, sorry.
Come on, man. I'm not.
Go on, Anne.
Go for it, man. Dive
You know, I can't pinpoint any one specific thing that I do that I am a crusader for. I try to do a lot of little things in the hopes that they're going to add up. So, you know, I time my showers. I try not to overly consume things or blindly consume things. When I used to be a vegan, but but now I'm not, and I try to make sure that I know the source of where I'm coming from, that I'm supporting, especially small businesses that need it, and also who have practices that I believe in. So I'm just trying to be switched on, and like everybody, do the best I can.
You time your showers. Bloody hell.
I gave up smoking.
I don't always listen, but
I mean, communal resources, like gathering people in one place, like a movie theater, to save electricity. So if you go see Interstellar every evening for the next month, you're going to save an enormous amount of resources. Anyway.
Yeah, in order to lose weight for Dallas Buyers Club, for 1 year, I just had to jog to all of my meetings and back home, which meant I didn't drive a car.
Are you
That's
serious?
no, I'm not.
Oh my God!
We are going cisterns and solar at our place.
Cool. Mackenzie?
When we go to the grocery store and we get plastic bags, I reuse them and use them as stuffing when I sew things. Recycle soda cans, just little things, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I would say the same thing as Anne. It's all sort of lots of little things as far as possible. Lots of carpooling, lots of well, I don't eat any meat, so there's that. And you know, we live in California, so the drought is a very big issue there. And I think that I think for most of us on at this table, that would probably be something that I think we're all thinking about. You know, conserving water.
Cool, thank you. Who's got the mic there? Yes, Kevin.
Hello. I wondered to what extent you might think that audiences would read it as a call to arms about our current situation, or whether it sort of comes from the standpoint that the Earth is already over and the end of the Earth will not be the end of us, which seems quite a reassuring sentiment.
Well, I think it is a reassuring sentiment. I mean, the film is optimistic in that sense, in that it's really saying that mankind exists independent of its particular situation. As far as it being a call to arms, I mean, no, specifically in the text of the film, you know, it has a jumping off point saying we're not meant to save the Earth, we're meant to leave it, which obviously if that's taken literally as to how we should be addressing this issue now, it would not be a particularly positive approach or viewpoint. Really, the film is fiction as a story. It feeds off certain of our worries and concerns that I think are very valid in the world today, but really it's about saying that what is mankind's place in the universe? Can we exist off this earth? I think it's a very exciting thing to deal with. Dramatically, I felt it was important that we have to deal with that out of necessity, but I think in real life it would be far better if we dealt with that issue out of choice.
Cool. A question there.
Can I add
oh, sorry,
a science fiction character?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're allowed.
Starbuck from the...
Battlestar Galactica?
Uh-huh.
From Battlestar Galactica?
From Battlestar Galactica, but I'm speaking specifically of the new version.
The TV version.
Not that I don't love the old version, but I'm not that familiar with it, so the new version.
Cool. Thank you. Yes, gentleman there with the mic. Again, you've been patient.
Question for Matthew and Anne. Emma mentioned at the beginning how difficult it was to get you to the middle of Iceland, remote places. I wonder, as actors, how difficult it was to actually act there, and in the suits, the physicality of that on what I would imagine was quite slippery surfaces.
Where are you?
He's over there.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go first?
Yes, please.
Iceland, number one, I tell you what was great about the suits in Iceland is we were more hot than cold. I remember sweating. We were not cold in Iceland.
The crew was pretty jealous of the space.
Yeah, because you could line it with all your warm clothes and under there, and no one could see it, so that was fine. Now, we did have, what do you call the things you put on the bottom of your feet?
Crampons.
Crampons. Those were a trick, and everyone, I don't know, I fell a couple of times. learning to walk in those, but you got more confident in those. I don't know, that was the most adventurous part of the shooting, because the elements there. And we did have one very hairy day where the winds picked up to 50 miles an hour, and we had to get off of the glacier, and helicopters are flying around. And anyway, we were grounded, had to stop filming. But it's a naturally epically beautiful place. That's part of the fun of what we get to do. When we get to places, I don't know, that's one of my favorite things about 22 years of doing this, the places I've gotten to travel for an actual job that I would have never gone to before unless I had a job there.
And spacesuit?
I should have gone first. That was a really beautiful answer, Matthew. I loved the spacesuit. Like from the second I put, Emma was at my first. You were there like the first moment I put it on, and I lit up. I felt like a kid. I was so happy. It felt like Halloween instantly. And I remember Chris, he's one of my favorite memories from the movie. Chris comes in, looks at it, goes, "That looks great." And we had to adjust something. It was going to take like 20 minutes. And you were just like, "All right, I'll be looking at jetpacks." I just love that moment. But it was challenging, which became part of the thing that I loved about it. It wasn't easy. You had to earn the right to wear it. And, in my first fitting, after wearing it for an hour, I just thought, "Ooh, this is heavy. This is starting to pinch my shoulders." And I realized that I was not going to be able to, as I had thought, slack off from the gym. Because I'm like, "Ooh, I'm not wearing a cat suit in this one. I can eat." And I did actually have to work out just as hard on this one, just to be able to stand up in it, just to be able to make the days in it. But what Matthew said is totally right. That's what you love about it, the inherent challenges. And then it was great because the suit became like its own character. And, they're not easy, and they're not easy in real life. And so there would be moments when you would need to get your helmet off or your glove off, and it would stick, and you would have that to interact with in the moment. And it just, I don't know, I always felt like it raised the dramatic stakes.
Great, thank you. Gentleman there, and then pass it along.
Okay. It's a question for Christopher and for Sir Michael. You've been very vocal about filming on film and screening on film. Do you genuinely believe that film on film has a future, or are you fighting a rearguard action and digital eventually will swamp it? I'd like to get Sir Michael's thoughts on the future of film as well.
Well, I think, it's both things. Certainly fighting a rearguard action, it certainly has been swamped by video technology, but it's not really a question of whether it should or shouldn't have a future. It sort of has to, simply because even from an archival perspective and all the rest, the libraries of film studios can't function without it. So it's very important to preserve its place in the filmmaking process. And obviously that's something I've done everything I can to draw attention to it, to preserve it for future generations. But I don't see any reason that it can't find the right level, the right place on an ongoing basis.
Michael?
I have an actor's attitude towards it. Is if you have film instead of digital, they have to cut eventually, so you don't have to learn all that dialogue. If you've got digital, it goes on forever. It's a nightmare. So I like film with nice short takes, because I just worked with Paolo Sorrentino, and he has 4 cameras, and he doesn't even rehearse because he's got digital. And you just go on there, and you go fluffing through it, and he doesn't care. You just keep going and going and going and going. And then you go home. And you come back the next day. So I prefer film.
Gentlemen.
Sorry, hello. A question for the panel, just about working with the beautiful Anne Hathaway. I wanted to know what it's like working with her.
I'll speak to Anne. It's my first time to work with her. I thoroughly enjoyed it. One, complete professional, fully prepared. She reminded me of something that I don't always do, but it takes a lot of courage to do as an actor. My favorite thing she did that I learned from her is that variation of takes, meaning you get it right. And actors know when we kind of get it right, when it feels right. And you look at the director and they're like, thumbs up, and they like it too. So the next take, a lot of times, will be like, well, I'm going to repeat that, or I'm going to give a little more of that, what I did and so well, what I think I did so well and so true. She would back off. I heard her many times back off and find a new rhythm and try to look at it from a different way and never repeat a performance. So variation is something that I know as actors is a really good thing that I was reminded of.
There's a gentleman there with the mic.
Do you think the events of last night, the NASA explosion, will change the way that Interstellar is viewed, and that it maybe brings a kind of realness to it, of the dangers of space travel?
Well, I think anytime you're reminded of how difficult this is, it brings people's attention to it. But particularly when you're looking at astronauts and what they face and who they are, and every time a rocket blows up or something like that, we're reminded of the incredible bravery of these people and the extraordinary nature of this endeavor, which requires resources from the entire world sort of put together. I mean, one of the things that I absolutely love about space exploration is it does represent the highest ambition of our collective endeavor to actually do something that difficult and get out into the universe and off this planet. I think it's an extraordinary thing, and I think people are constantly being reminded of that.
Okay, so.
Firstly, thank you for this beautiful film, and I'd like to ask Mr. Nolan. The film has some wonderful female characters. How do you approach writing women? And to the actresses on the panel, what did you think? How did you feel when you first read the script?
Well, for me, I had the advantage of coming to my brother's script that he'd been working on for several years, and one of the things I really loved about it was the character of Brand that Anne plays in the film. I thought it was just a wonderful role, and I went to Anne with it because I knew she was very interested in science and would completely get this character and everything this character is about. When it comes to Murph, in his draft, Murph was originally a boy, and maybe because my oldest child is a girl, I decided to change Murph to a girl, and I found that very naturally to me, trying to write that relationship between a father and his daughter, it was something I really enjoyed, and then enjoyed extrapolating that out to the rest of the story. But really, for me, as a writer, I try to be simple and really just lay the story down, because for me, the screenplay is just a working document, and then you bring the actors in, and you're trusting them and hoping for them to really flesh these characters out and bring a sense of truth to them.
The gentleman at the back with the microphone. Oh, sorry, let's do the lady then, and then we'll do you, and then I'm afraid that's the last we can have.
This is a question for Matthew. My colleague sitting next to me said that after seeing this movie, he wanted to go home and hug his daughter. And I just wondered, did you have the same feeling after working on this day after day? And could you also tell us how becoming a father has affected you and your acting? Has it given a deeper emotional resonance?
I was fortunate. I had my family there with me, and we were in Calgary. We were all set up in a trailer, so they were right there on the set. And the mornings, and that was all the scenes that was shot with Mackenzie, where we were at the farm, which was most of the direct father-daughter relationship in the film. I'm pretty sure that I remember that was the greatest way for me to go to set each day, was saying goodbye to my kids, and then at the end of the day to come back home to them and have that immediacy. Not a phone call, I'll see you in a few weeks. How is that, being a father, informed me? Well, I mean, I don't know, I've said so many things about, and shared a bunch of things about what fatherhood means. I tell you, it has restored a certain sense of wonder. I mean, I'm a very logical guy, and as anybody that has kids know that, very early on, kids think logic is a bunch of baloney. And any story, another thing that's great with kids is when you're telling stories, there's no end to any of them. There's never a period on the end of any story. It doesn't matter about logic. It doesn't matter that the river rose and the elephant and the leopard were separated in the end. They go, well, no, because you told me the world's round and that leopard could run east. And if you ran long enough, he'd come up on the other side with the elephant. So keep telling the story. You're like, okay. So it goes on and on and on. And they've also reminded me, I think, when you raise kids, you see that every day they're seeing something for the very first time. And so it reminded me as we get older and we travel down the same paths and we take some things for granted to travel the same path and see things for the first time and give them the justice they deserve as if you just saw them for the first time. I go on and on about stuff I've learned from my kids, but that's some.
Cool, thank you. Last question, I'm afraid.
Professor Baron Cox recently said that the possibility of alien life, it's probably not certain at all. Has doing this film changed your perspective on that, and do you believe there could be now life in other galaxies?
She said it's probably not.
He said there's like no sense, it's certain that it's impossible, no intelligent life.
It's certain that it's impossible. It's probably not certain. There's a lot of, you've got a lot of probability banging around there. I wouldn't, because I've heard his quote, I wouldn't speak to it, but there's a thing called the Drake equation, which he was probably referring to, that pretty well establishes from a mathematical point of view. It's extremely likely, actually. I mean, everything is speculation beyond that. What you can say is, given the number of celestial bodies, the number of potentially habitable planets and all the rest, it's very difficult to approach these things from mathematical probability point of view. And then it's just, is it an interesting speculation for you or not, I think. But the idea really, I mean, one of the things that working on this film really brought home to me is the idea of scale. It's the idea of perspective, of how small we are on our little planet compared with what we already know about the vast universe around us, and then what we can speculate is even beyond that. So I think to try and make any kind of determination along the lines of probable, certain, it's very difficult. I mean, we really are speculating at that point. So then you're down to, well, what's an entertaining speculation? And we've tried to fill this film with entertaining speculations.
But like your belief, do you believe that there could be alien life apart from like speculation? Like it's more of a faith, the idea that it could be out there and open up the panels.
Do you believe in aliens?
Well, that's what I was answering. It's not a question of belief. It's
fine.
How you tend to speculate.
Cool. I apologise if we didn't get to your question, but please put your hands together for Jessica, Michael, Anne, Christopher, Matthew, Mackenzie, and Emma.